So the long story short is everyone gets into heaven. That's why I can do this. Everyone gets into heaven. Except maybe one. Okay? Except maybe one doesn't get into heaven. But he could give a shit. Because he loves you. And the thing is, you're okay. You're not only okay, you're beyond okay. Everything that we see out there through the Hubble telescope, through microscopes and history into evolution going years back, all the colors sparkling everywhere, that you can see it means only one thing. It's all within you. Not a universe in you, but universes. Not just you, but 7 billion, and you are one. And so, it's a little bit challenging to try and communicate that while trying to pay for rent. But then there's Zakum, the coffee achievers. Anyway, okay, so blah. So the point of the matter is that read thing, if you do it, great. If you don't do it, great. But it's just a linear thing of downloading of the words. Don't think about it. Do it in English. Try and do it in a sing-song, chanting version. Don't try and think, why am I doing this? It's like, be foolish in your own apartment. Close the doors. Don't let anyone see you in case you're worried that someone is going to think you're weird. It's America. You're free not only to have speech and religion, but free to be weird. And there's plenty of weird, and most of it gets marketed. Thank you, Marilyn Manson. Marilyn Manson is so cool. Dang. Why didn't I think of that? Darn it. Marilyn Manson. Anyway, so the thing is, okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and be like preacher. I'm gonna be the preacher. I ain't gonna be no preacher. I'm just gonna be the reader. So there's Deuteronomy chapter 32. It is called the Song of Moses. The very last thing, second to very last thing, he sings. It's actually called the Song of Moses. He sings it to the children of Israel. And he tells them that he's going to drop doctrine and stuff. But then he sort of kicks their ass. He says they've corrupted themselves, blah, 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 blah. And then he uses this line, but Jeshurun waxed fat and kicked. Thou art waxen fat, thou art grown thick, thou art covered with fatness. Then he forsook God which made him, and lightly esteemed the rock of his salvation. They provoked him to jealousy with strange gods, with abominations provoked they him to anger. They sacrificed to devils, not to God. Oh my God, I love this stuff. I can't ever, so sorry. Anyway, that's Deuteronomy. And I've read it so many times, and then with the pastor, thank you pastor, I went back, and then I was like, Jeshurun. So I did a little Google word search and blah, blah, blah. Used my little internet computer. And I'm like, Jeshurun. And I looked in the Authorized King James Version of the Bible. Only appears once in that passage. Who the heck is Jeshurun? Because it's symbolic. It's metaphor. It's the real Bible code, not that frickin' book that those knuckleheads sell. Numbnuts. Anyway. But then I checked the Tanakh. So the Jews have translated for themselves the first part called the Old Testament. It's called Tanakh, which means the prophets, the writings, and something else. Anyway, and it's essentially on the surface the same storyline. But this was, in a case, which happens too with anagrams and wordplay, the work of the scholars and all these sort of folks definitely does pay off a lot of times. And thank you, by the way. I don't mean to be dismissive. The only enemy here is the corporation, okay? Corporation, there's no mercy for. The oppressor, there's no mercy for. Other people, human beings, anyone who's ever tried, you're fine. Every human being is fine. But anyway, so, but then it had it appearing in the book of Isaiah. And so then I looked, and it wrote it Jeshurun. Then I went and looked, and holy cannoli, it turns out that in chapter 44 of Isaiah, which is one of the, like, Isaiah was a prophet in the sense that he was a Jew, and he kept chastising the, quote, house of Israel. It's like, and that's the great thing about the Jewish texts. If you never read it as a Christian, man, you are missing everything that it's supposed to be about. Because there was the Word of God, and the entire book is the collection of the writings of those people who were so-called, would have been the Christians of their days, chastising the church. That's Isaiah, that's Jeremiah, that's Ezekiel. And they come up with some of the most powerful images that get used nowadays within your churches. And so, as a result, if you don't know the history and the connective tissue, which is part of doing the read, then you're subject to the manipulation of these images by your preachers. And even your preachers don't mean it on purpose, because most of them couldn't figure out any meaningful work to do and went ahead and went to seminary, because you should get a freaking job, do something, build a house, dig a ditch, grow fruit, heal the sick, visit the widows, visit the orphans, stop making big congregations and making a bunch of money. It's what moth corrupteth, and it's all out of your hands anyway, so it's numbnuts. Anyway, so I'm going to read this chapter, and that'll definitely have to be a separate video. And okay, but before I read the chapter, so here's the thing. Jeshurun, okay, when you read the Bible nowadays, if you do it, this is my spin and my tainting of it. This is not a doctrine. This is simply how I understand it, which may or may not be fun for you. And the idea is to make it fun, right? If you're going to tempt, you don't tempt by fear, you tempt by fun and sexiness. Fortunately, I'm a little old for the sexiness. Although I might work out if I can make this work. So Jerusalem, when you read it now, doesn't refer to the place in the Middle East. It refers to the USA, because there's JER-USA-LEM. If you make allowance for metaphor over time, and that there is some kind of symbolic, logo-based externalization, manifestation, articulation of the symbology, and that we, not being directed by some guy with a beard, but simply by our own utterances and creations, manifest in some form that can be discerned the signs and symbols of God. This United States, with its big manifest destiny thing, is absolutely correct. It is the new Jerusalem, USA-LEM. That being said, then it would behoove one who's interested in the well-being of the USA to go back and read this. Although, when they go back and read this with a prior motivation and intent to discern something, to impose their understanding on it, then they become unable to unlock the book, because the book says, you don't come wanting to take. If you come, you start at the beginning and you walk the entire path, and when you get to the end of it, you shut up and you think about it, and then you'll understand. You'll stand under. You will stand under, and then you'll be able to do, because then you'll be on a foundation. And on that foundation is the temple which comes down from heaven, from the book of Revelations, built. And that temple is not an actual physical place. That temple is the temple that happens in this temple. Good. Getting really high on myself, thinking I know something. But it's nothing I know. It's all here. So that takes away the too much of the risk of pride, hubris, and ego. Oh, anyway, I mentioned before about Armageddon, which is Har-Megiddo, which is the height of Megiddo. So Megiddo, in wordplay, if you look at that place, it's a little spit of land in Israel now. No one's going to fight. There had been battles there in the past and blah, blah, blah. But Megiddo is a communication of where the battle takes place. You use those letters and you get the word me, you get the word I, you get the word id, you get the word ego, you get the word God, you get the word die, right? Wow. I say, wow. Now, scholars and theologians will go, well, no, the real root of the word was blah, 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 blah. And most people don't really care because they hear Armageddon, which is a great title for a movie. So, in a way, Armageddon already happened. It was at the movie theaters. Why not just go watch Armageddon and be done with? Let's move on. Let's move on to the garden. That's all this is about. Occupy God is about, we're here. Pardon our mess while we're under construction, but it's done. This is the time. We're done. It's the time of the end. Okay. Let me see. Still got lights on. I still got my Zakum. Oh man, this coffee sucks. I used to work with Starbucks back in the day. That was good coffee, in spite of it being Satan's coffee. Yeah, sorry, that's a little jab. It started off so good, Howie Schultz had such promise, and then you went public, and then it became the big green coffee machine monster. Hopefully you can help everybody from your corporate prison. Anyway, so just I was mentioning that Megiddo thing. So that's it. So it's all symbolic and such. So so Jerusalem. But in this particular passage, the Song of Moses, I'm like, I've been trying to make a song out of this for like 15 years, trying to find the music. I'm like, Lord, I know you don't want me around and blah blah blah, but this seems really important, and I still can't crack the nut. I got like the first 4 verses kind of musically articulated, but then it gets kind of sketchy. But then it mentions Jeshurun, wax fat, thou art waxen fat, thou art grown thick. And I know that that means America, because we become fat. In fact, we're the fattest nation. I mean, literally, it's not even, God, this isn't even subtle, folks. The whole point is not even subtle. American Idol on Fox TV and, blah, blah, blah. We're also fat. We're in a world that's starving, where kids in Somalia are dying like flies by the side of the road. We are becoming fat like cows being led to slaughter. And this is the day of slaughter. It's the day of slaughter. Look at your, I don't know, I'll be our, if you're comfortable with that. If it's not, then it's your. But look at the numbers. People dying of diabetes and heart disease and psychiatric disorders and killing ourselves on the highways and being put in prisons and that's happening in Jerusalem. So anyway, so it turns out that when I looked up the thing in the Tanakh, it's Jeshurun is also Jesurun. In chapter 44, it doesn't have the H, so it missed it on my word search. So I was like, oh my God, look, but it's the same word. It's just sometimes that happens in the Authorized King James Version of the Bible. I mean, heck, it's old, you know what I'm saying? Okay, but it's still, it hasn't changed. That's the thing. It's what was around in 1611, before America was established, before our world economic system was established. It informs everything, including our politics, our policy, our economics, our psychiatry, our psychology, anything that has no body but you still believe in, as opposed to God, because God, whatever. So it turns out, okay, so it's chapter 44. And so Jeshurun is the United States. So it's the same name. So Jacob is Israel. And once you learn to read this stuff and you whatever, then hopefully you'll have better things to do with your time than play with little word games, But let's say you read it and you've done whatever you've done over the course of your life, from the time you were born and you were a little fetus, and then you developed, and then you saw mom and dad, and wherever that happened for you, however it happened, and then you lived your life and you believed and you didn't believe, and etc., and then you do that read that I talked about. Then when it interfaces with you, it'll be you and it on its own terms, independent of anybody else. But then you can retroactively go ahead and reconfigure and understand all the connective tissue that you ever always knew was there, especially until your adolescence. Until your adolescence, everyone knows that there is a destiny, that there is a meaning. And there's also a simultaneous chemical, neurological, biological process happening, which has to do with the development of neurons and dendrites and processes in the brain and connections, which they say, if you don't do it by a certain time, like learning language when you're a child, becomes very much more difficult later when the brain prunes itself in the form of a chemical flush. Generally happens around 8 years old, which is around the time of the Mormon maturity age, and around 13 to 15, which is a lot of other religions have their maturity ages there. Then after that, you end up being an adult. And as an adult, we all know that it didn't happen like we thought. As an adult, we know that those ideals out the window. We didn't become that great thing we thought it would be. That cloud didn't open and all the joys didn't come down. We lose our dreams and we become blind to what it is to be the magic of a child. And then we, quote unquote, misunderstand and misapply in a big way what it says in the gospel: suffer the little children to come unto me. I mean, talk about knucklehead, numbnuts. It doesn't mean make the children suffer, morons. It doesn't mean make the children suffer to go unto Jesus. It means you suffer those little children. Is it a pain in the ass for you to be nice to them? Suffer it. Is it hard for you to think about their world and not your own desires and wants and what I got to do.